we are building a data science community over at IBM, Sue and I. And our topic is, where does data science look like and act like and sound like DevRel and typical developer relations type of communities, and where does it diverge? So we'll jump right in with that. So first, I'll just do a quick level set on what our program is. So we started our mission about a year and 6 months ago. And it was a special group set up, kind of like a little startup within IBM. I know that sounds a little funny, but honestly, we were starting up this new practice for with the mission of winning the hearts and minds of data scientists. So our goal was to engage practitioners. So IBM's often known for its very much, enterprisey sales focus, but very much we realize we have established a DevRel practice, and this is kind of an overlay on top of that to focus on data scientists. So we want to also talk about just not us, just not product type of topics. So we kind of have that freedom, which is really great. And as you all know, really important that the conversation doesn't start with, hey, can you buy something? Rather, let me help you understand how to solve a technical problem. We are focusing on everybody, kind of the community around data scientists. As this is rapidly evolving, you'll see that's part of what we're here to talk about. Data engineers, machine learning engineers, AI app developers, a whole community, and it goes on, AI architects. So it's definitely a very broad and evolving community. What our objectives were is, we really wanted to empower and truly kind of at a altruistic level, empower the next generation of data scientists and AI developers. We want to, of course, advocate for IBM Stack, but we also understand, and I think many folks out there may not know, that IBM is a huge open source fund. If you don't remember back to the late 90s, we were one of the early proponents of Linux on our mainframe. So it's definitely core to us and who we are. But that actually, strangely, the marketing part was it wasn't really known. So how do we make sure that we bring that message and engage and participate with the Python community? It was interesting at one of the meetups we went to early on, someone said, I didn't know IBM was doing anything other than a Java stack. So, or what do you contribute to open source? And we have hundreds of contributors and projects. So anyways, getting that word out there, kind of the marketing side. We also have a big AI learning group, and we're bringing that also to the community because, as you'll know, and as you'll see through the talk, AI learning is core to what this community is doing and wants to do. We want to build partnerships outside of IBM and with the technical communities and ecosystem. So this means educational communities. It means folks like PyData and Data Council, some of our partners. And also, of course, we want to attract our client practitioners. So we want people who are using our products to be able to come and have a conversation, which, and sometimes in big companies, it's a procurement conversation and a salesperson sells. But we want to make sure we can engage with the community and the technical folks who are actually doing the work. So that was kind of our mission on the first year. And with that, I'll jump over to Sue and talk a little bit about how are these things looking like or not looking like a developer relations typical life cycle in building software.
Thank you, Rosie. Thanks, Rosie. So I'll talk about this a little bit in the context of, first of all, the AI lifecycle. Obviously, from a first glance, you can see it's quite complicated. And it's complicated, but also extremely critical. And this kind of shows where there's this intersection between the data scientists and other disciplines in the organization, including the software engineers. So throughout the AI lifecycle, the data scientist does need to be involved. But as we work with this changing lifecycle and this evolving lifecycle and learn more about being able to get models into deployment and production more rapidly, tools are coming along in order to enable other disciplines to participate earlier in the cycle. It is multidisciplinary, not only with data scientists and developers, but of course the business unit executives involved in helping to scope what the initial project is, through the point which is extremely important at the end, that though you've deployed the model, you certainly can't throw it over the wall and say you're done at that point. You need all these disciplines to be engaged in the monitoring, the maintenance, and potentially retraining of the model if needed, as the model potentially drifts or has biases in it that are revealed, or the world, as we've seen, is constantly changing and not keeping up with the world. So the AI lifecycle shows these points of intersection, and it does have to integrate with the software development lifecycle, because of course these models created by the data scientists have to go into applications created by the software engineers and get into production. Otherwise, nothing happens. So every part of the lifecycle is essential and necessary. If we look at the next slide, then we can see some of the ways the data science role is changing, and it's changing in a lot of ways. But here's just a few. Mobility and focus kind of go hand in hand. Go back a number of years, and data scientists were primarily engaged in developing insights for the organization to make key decisions. But as you go forward, the demand in AI and the success of models in operationalizing the business has drawn a demand for more and more of the models getting created and put into production. This puts a huge focus on needing more data scientists and like internal raids inside of a company, trying to draw out their data scientists into different organizations. There's a premier company that talked about how they have a group of 10 data scientists in their marketing organization because they're able to discover more ways operationally to bring customers back, to improve customer engagement, many things. So the data scientists have become more mobile in the organization and therefore engaging more groups or individuals or disciplines in their work as this demand for models grows. The tools, of course, affect all of this. Tools, like we see for software engineers, for data scientists are growing and proliferating at such a rapid speed that they too have to keep up with what's available. What used to be the world of, say, SPSS or R is now the world of Python, used by data scientists to build the models as well as developers to build the apps that productionalize the models. And then techniques and languages and new capabilities like AutoML and model ops are helping to create repeatable processes and speed up the process of getting the models into production or even creating the models. It also helps break down the role of the data scientist, because it is a huge responsibility they have from end to end on that life cycle. But being able to break down or unpack the role of the data scientist, you can involve different specialists that work with the generalist data scientists to execute the entire life cycle. ML engineers are quite a popular role that's emerged over time, where they come in on the production, helping to put the model into production, not so trained, say, on the heavy analytics of the data scientist, but the other tools and techniques for getting it into production. And lastly, I'll mention, call it competition, call it a little less burdening on the data scientists within an organization. Now companies can buy versus build some things where models are built into applications or software by ISVs. All this is kind of showing the various change that's creating the opportunity for more disciplines to participate in the process of developing, deploying, and monitoring and maintaining models, creating huge needs for and opportunities for learning, therefore driving the interest in communities like ours, like yours, for those learning opportunities of various types. And on the right, just showing some of the hot topics that we've covered from the data science community with IBM and more to come. So Rosie, back to you.
Thank you. Let's get my next slide here. So where does this net out? I think Sue painted a pretty good picture of this early or stage complexity of what companies are learning with. And IBM has been involved in helping companies learn this. It's not so much kind of the early adopters that we see have had machine learning from in their blood from the get-go, but also helping companies figure out how this works. It feels like some of our clients are just also understanding the DevOps role and the move to cloud and everything. But there are some things that make these roles distinct, and it's evolving, as Sue was saying. It's changing really fast and rapidly. What you see kind of in the more mature SDLC side with developers, you have established roles, developers, DevOps, and a whole host of other kind of support folks that go around that as well. So what you see with data scientists are you still have a lot of generalist roles. They tend to be multidisciplinary. And with data scientists, as many may know from kind of that unicorn model that was popular a few years ago, is that, you have a blend of comp sci, math, statistics, and industry experience as well, or vertical. So they're also doing a lot of things. 80%, it's still 80%, a study just came out from Anaconda that 80% of what data scientists are doing is still like data cleansing and such. So they're really having to work across different things as these roles start to settle out and people say, hey, I want to get this into production. Agile has been around for, 20 some years now. And, that really came to bear that the customer drives the feedback, and you do that quickly and regularly. But with data scientists, it's not that the customer doesn't, provide the feedback, but it's like you're looking more at what decision you're trying to make. So it's driving a slightly different outcome with a slightly different audience or slightly different conversation. So that process is different. It's also making decisions in live apps. So how do you make sure that those are okay? Of course, you look at this is a simplistic comment, but data is secondary to developers. Code is secondary to data scientists, not to say that they don't use it in their day in, day out with Python especially, but you're certainly looking at algorithms and models and those outcomes, and code is just kind of a means to an end. How do they identify? Well, traditionally developers have identified by language or stack. I'm a Java programmer. I'm, a JavaScript programmer. I know that's also emerging as people become more multi-language focused or what stack they're using. But data scientists, and we had this discussion within our team of data scientists who are the evangelists. And, how do we identify? Well, it's usually by what type of data you're using. Are you doing visual recognition? Are you doing natural language processing? Are you doing some neural network stuff with deep learning? And what data types are you using? Are you using just a simple Excel spreadsheet, which is still often, a data input? What are you doing with it? Are you doing computer vision? Are you doing natural language processing? Are you doing, an ad selector, the next recommendation? Also, what type of packages are you using? So you can define yourself by, hey, I'm an astrophysicist processing data, scientific data. I'm using SunPy and AstroPy. So, or I'm using Pandas and scikit-learn. So there's these different types of tools that these folks identify around. The next one was kind of fun because, what do developers worry about? Well, a lot of the stuff, I did in my early day was, oh my gosh, network configuration and network building into the app and the exploitation and security exploitations. Whereas data scientists are looking at things like data privacy. What data can I use? What data is available to me? How can I make sure no privacy is revealed? But these other things like explainability and bias, Sue also mentioned, are becoming really first of mind for these folks. For developers, continuous integration, and as Sue said, data scientists, model retraining. You're constantly doing it. It's not like a one and done with a model. So it's not just adding new features, but it's also making sure that your model's working. So I'm sure we can think of some others. I'd love to hear what others people have. So I'd love to hear that on the Slack chat afterwards as well. All right, so I think we have the last few minutes here to go into, how are we measuring our success of our program? Well, it's not totally atypical of what you're doing in the DevRel world. The content and the audience and the topics are different. But, our key metric, especially our first year out, was, are we growing our communities? And how did we do? Well, we started out a little slow, but then as you'll see on the next slide, what kind of helped move us along was having some great partnerships and understanding what was driving the interest of this community, which I'll get to in a minute. Our team was producing content, not only creating it, but also going out and curating it from around the company. As you can imagine, there's a lot of technical folks in the company and bringing their perspective into the community. Ecosystem participation. So are we out there with the community and engaging? Product trials, that's an area that I think we're still early on. It's certainly a goal. Open source leadership, we have a ton of open source projects that IBM actually creates and puts out there, but we also participate. So we did a benchmark study, and I don't know if we'll get to it, but I do have a slide in there that talks about where we were perceived versus what we actually do. So again, it's all about market perception. We also work closely with our AI learning team, so courses taken. We're just getting started on those. A lot of them we host on Coursera. We have over 50 IBM courses there, but we also have paid ones that customers can use for our products. And then in engagement, you'll see that has also really, really blossomed in the last few months. So I'll take you through some of those in the time we have left. And how did we get there? So as you can see, this number back was pretty flat. We took over the community last January, and we had less than 1,000 members. So now we're at about 12,500. So 12,423, I think, is this number. And you can see our page views have also spiked. The other thing that was really interesting and what we're looking at is the engagement has really blossomed as well. So not only are we looking at the blogs we post, which a lot of my team actually does that kind of creation and adds that, but also the discussions. New people are joining, they're asking questions. The files are actually content that other people are uploading as well as us, but you can see the discussions on the right side of the chart is what really has grown. And how do we do that? Well, part of it has been, key partnerships. We do a lot with Coursera, and I'd say that contributed to a huge part of our community growth, because this community, as Sue highlighted, is very, very learning intensive. And so offering more of those classes, offering them for free, offering them with mentors, which is another thing we want to add to the community, is huge. We've had some big digital events that have brought in a lot of great technical content. Again, we're focused on technical content, not necessarily come by our product, but it's about how we can help people learn and engage. You need that proactive community management. I think everyone on this in this conference probably knows that you need some proactive people to be out there helping the group, join discussions. It's all about the content. We definitely focus on some content topics that are core to what IBM can really differentiate on, like AI trust, ML ops at scale, NLP, AI learning, and all of our open source stuff. So but everything we do is provide kind of meet up in the box that enables our field team. So we provide that core content, and then we go have a field team that goes out and does that locally, or now virtually locally, as it may be. I'd like to talk about this because these bigger events actually indicated, again, that huge desire to learn. So I'll let Sue, if you want to comment on that real quick.
Very quickly, I'll just point out, these are two very different virtual events that we did this year, but amazing the size audiences they drew in a short amount of time, even from point of creation to deployment in 3 weeks on the Learn AI event. The Learn AI event on the right, that was more of a live kind of conference type event with two major tracks, one attracting practitioners, the other attracting more of your management or those who are leaders trying to make decisions about how to organize and operate within an organization in AI. And both events on each side attracted a good variety of an audience, where the left-hand side, that's talking about a practitioner type event with a masterclass for learning about AI explainability, where you could earn a badge, and also a hackathon after taking the masterclass that you could participate in to actually produce apps, such as the winning app on autism screening for that event. In each case, we had over 25% data scientists attending. We had over 25% of the combination of ML engineers, data engineers, and software developers, a large body of students, and then researchers and so forth, as we're targeting a good variety of attendees. But it just shows the hunger to learn in this new and emerging world, and the value of having variety in what we present. Rosie?
One other way to slice it on how we focus, I kind of looking at, not only do we do the community and grassroots support, but we also have to, especially as a big corporation, focus on some of the thought leadership on data science and AI open source. So that is partially technical content and also learning content. So that's kind of how this matrix came to be, of the partners that we're working with in the community, as well as the different type of content. And I'll say, for example, my team last year curated and authored some sort of format of 78 content pieces. So that is really what we're focused on, working with the other groups in IBM or ourselves. We also did a ton of events and meetups that brought in, along with the Coursera partnership, a lot of the members. And then we kept building on that by adding new courses and such. So, just kind of how we're looking at how we kind of help and build the community. It's kind of both of those community, as well as, what can we do as a corporation to help get the word out there and to help benefit the community. And we look at that strongly, is how can we benefit the community with what we offer, which is kind of sponsoring some of these groups, as well as participating in open source projects and that sort of thing. I think I'm probably almost out of time. My timer just went off. But one of the things we also benchmark, since this is a metrics conversation, is the open source community benchmark sentiment on IBM. And I won't show how the other vendors played out, but we could do better. So that's one of the things we're also tracking is what is the perception out there that we are contributing and being part of that community. Next up is the path to revenue with product trials. So building those in to the funnel, if we look at it with the technical community as well as advocacy, that's part of what we want to do. My team sits up at the top with tech marketing, the demand gen team in the middle, and then, once they become a community member. And then I know we're out of time, so I'll be real quick. The audience is different. The data scientists don't see themselves as builders or software developers. So it's really key to keep those fields separate and to respect that and to engage that. And then the process is different for the life cycle. It's still settling for AI. It's still very new, as Sue was saying earlier. It's just you've got to recognize all the constituents involved. But then finally, the similarities, communities are community. You need care and feeding, you need great content, and you need, especially now, how do you engage virtually and provide that learning, which is so important in a time like now where we can't gather in person. We still want to be connected virtually.